Over and over, I relive my first moments on this alien planet.
Returnal releases on the 30th of April exclusively to the PlayStation 5, and I can't wait to play it. It hasn't received the same level of attention compared to some of the other titles announced for PS5, which is a shame, but let me quickly summarize what the game is. Returnal is a third-person roguelike shooter developed by Housemarque. You play as Celine, an astro scout who crash lands on an alien planet after receiving a mysterious signal, and the rest is up to us to find out, but until then, here's why you should be excited about Returnal.
Even death is no escape.
Roguelike evolved. Upon first glance, you wouldn't think Returnal is a roguelike, but it is, which can be concerning depending on how you look at it. On one hand, you might say, wow, this is just Risk of Rain with next-gen graphics, which in my opinion isn't even a bad thing because Risk of Rain is super fun and I highly recommend it, but Returnal has merged the roguelike elements into its story's narrative, and this is a big reason why you should be excited. This new style of roguelikes that evolve the genre. After playing popular roguelike titles like Hades and seeing the world that developer Supergiant Games were able to create for Hades, I know it's possible to create deep narrative in games like this. Housemarque says that in Returnal, every death, the levels change, new enemies show up, new weapons to use, and most importantly, new story paths for you to explore and figure out why whatever's happening is happening. And this is what complements the combat, preventing it from getting stale and keeps you saying, just one more run, just one more run. Combat. Speaking of combat, Returnal's combat looks amazing, and I'm a big fan of tight, high-pressure combat where one misstep could cost you your life. It's fast, action-packed, and Housemarque's signature bullet hell style has translated well to Returnal from their previous games. Because there is a lot going on screen, but it's the fighting back that I'm actually interested in. So how do we fight back? Well, there are 10 weapons, each with alternate firing modes that can be augmented further with stackable weapon traits, and apparently there are more than 90 traits in the game, so the build variety is definitely there to keep you playing and experimenting. And in addition to the guns, there are melee weapons and other gadgets to aid you in battle, and this is definitely something to be excited about. And just a side note, speaking about the alt fire modes and how they work, a blog post on the official PlayStation website says this: every weapon has an alternative firing mode, and each of these alt fire modes can be found on any weapon. By using the adaptive trigger, players can move seamlessly between aiming down sights and activating alt fire, squeeze it halfway down to aim down the iron sights, squeeze it all the way down to activate your rechargeable alt fire attack. Switching between modes on a single trigger will become second nature in no time. I love this. These gameplay features are tied directly to the DualSense controller, and I won't lie, when I first heard about the DualSense controller, I thought the new features were a bit of a gimmick, but after playing Astro's Playroom, which is essentially a showcase for the DualSense controller, my mind changed immediately when I realized how well it worked, and I can't wait to see how games utilize it in the future. If the adaptive trigger controls are not your cup of tea, it can be switched off as well. Graphics. This is the first time we've seen a roguelike from a AAA studio. The visuals in Returnal are insane, and there's so much to talk about graphically, but the key thing here that piqued my interest is how they've built this dark, ominous world. It's gritty and almost horror-like, and then they slapped an absolute disco light show on top of it in the form of you and your enemy's attacks. That's a juxtaposition visually if I've ever seen one, and I love it. It's different. But saying that, it seems like they know exactly when to turn it on and off, because once you're back into the cutscenes, you're back into a very serious narrative. Visually, it's definitely going to showcase the PS5's power, and it's one of the first games to launch that is not cross-generation, so it's not going to be held back at all because it needed to be developed for the PS4 as well. And speaking of power, the new SSD in the PS5 is being utilized to the fullest, with the devs saying that when you die, you load back in almost instantly, which is perfect for players like me who can't shoot with a controller, because I've foreseen the future and I see many deaths in Returnal. To summarize, Housemarque are fantastic developers. If you've ever played Resogun or Nex Machina, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Returnal is a project that's far grander than Housemarque's previous games, but you can see their DNA in the roguelike elements, combat, and visuals. I'm excited for it, and you should be too. We're gonna have a full review and all sorts of guides coming up for it soon on the VG247 website. Make sure you stay locked, subscribe, and take care everyone.